Pete here for Chelmsford Telemedia. If you like our TV station as much as I do, then later this month there's an important public hearing I really want you to attend. It's happening on Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. at a regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting. It's called an ascertainment hearing, and what that means in plain English is that the Board of Selectmen wants to hear from you about how Comcast is doing in Chelmsford. So this is our chance to tell the Board of Selectmen and Comcast how important CTM is to our community. And we need them to know this because Comcast is one of our most important sources of funding, and we'd like that to continue. Maybe you appreciate our live coverage of school committee, selectmen, finance committee, and other important government meetings. Maybe you like programming for kids and for parents that's all about the Chelmsford Public Schools. Or maybe you value how CTM helps people like you produce your own shows on topics that are important to you and to the community. Whatever the reason, please come to this hearing. And if you'd be willing to say a few words about what CTM means to you, that'd be even better still. Once again, the hearing is on Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, number 204, in the town offices. I hope to see you there.
I'm sorry, February 10th, 2015. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome. This meeting is being recorded and televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. If there is anyone else who is planning to record, would you please so indicate at this time? Okay. You have on your agendas in front of you a consent agenda. Does anybody need a hard copy of these minutes, or do you all have them?
I sent them to everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so these are minutes from our executive session of February 2nd. They are presented for your approval at this time. The reason for having executive session still applies, so they will not be released, but they will be approved. Does anyone have any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the executive session minutes of February 2nd, 2015, to be withheld from publication until subsequent review determines that the circumstances no longer warrant continued non-disclosure.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, we have a student representative report. Owen, you're all by yourself tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Rickney. First, I would like to start with the CHS boys hockey team, specifically senior captain Pat Couliard, who has been selected to participate in the 6th annual Shriners All-Star Hockey Classic. The event will be held on Saturday, March 21st at the DCU Center in Worcester. The Shriners football and hockey games showcase top high school talent and raise money for the Shriners Hospital for Children. Additionally, there's a great story in the Lowell Sun about the boys hockey team that I saw earlier today that During the blizzard, while their coach, Michael McGrath, was undergoing surgery to remove cancerous lymph nodes in his neck, the boys hockey team came together and did all of the shoveling for their coach's driveway and their porch. So that was a nice little story. Furthermore, I today was informed from historian Kevin Kwong of the National Honor Society that in March, NHS is hosting an art auction selling quality art pieces created by CHS students. The proceeds will go back to the Chelmsford Art and Music Departments as kind of a recycling method to raise money and to recognize artistic achievements. The art pieces will be affordable to purchase at the auction, and they're looking for as many donations as possible, so that should be a fun event. Additionally, the science team this past Thursday came in almost close to a third place finish, which is very good, at the Western Suburban Science League competition that takes place once every month. Also, the community service organization Key Club will be selling carnations during school this week, during lunches, as Valentine's Day is coming up. So everyone is encouraged to buy some for their special someones and to raise money. And the money will be donated to the American Heart Foundation. Furthermore, 18 students from Chelmsford High School, Parker, and McCarthy Middle Schools earned awards at the Boston Globe Scholastic Art Awards, and several students won multiple awards. Some of the highlights were Peter Curtis and Elizabeth Saloma, who earned gold keys. Their works of art will be displayed at Boston City Hall in March. And then all students who won awards will appear on an upcoming episode of CPS's Art Department's TV show, Spotlight on Fine Arts, on Chelmsford Telemedia. Furthermore, senior Erin Phillips, who I seem to be mentioning a lot at these meetings, she will be going to the National Championship for Speech and Debate, which will be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida later this year. She is representing CHS at the national tournament for oral presentation for 2 categories, prose and poetry. And then my partner, Monsi Donkey, who could not be here tonight, she qualified as a second alternate in original oratory. So congratulations to them.
Thanks.
And another individual achievement, senior Jack Hansberry has committed to playing football at Bentley University. So congratulations. And then turning it over to the girls hockey team, recently they've moved up in the Super 8 rankings, placing 9th for Division I girls hockey. They recently knocked off Andover and then tied Acton-Boxborough, so those were 2 great games. And the senior duo of Rachel Bossi and Julianne Sheehan has been lighting the lamp all season long. Congrats to them. Furthermore, Next Top Teacher took place this past weekend, and I heard it went quite well. I couldn't attend because I was puppy sitting, but congratulations to Mr. Beato, who won the competition. He's been becoming increasingly well-known among students after he was a judge during this year's pep rally. And thank you very much to the Theater Guild for running the entire event. They put on a fantastic show. And lastly, upcoming, there is one senior, Zach Davidson, who is hosting a pancake dinner this Thursday at 5 p.m. at the Central Congregational Church in Chelmsford for an Eagle Scout project fundraiser. And several students at CHS have been doing events like these. Senior Nestor Polche hosted a similar event 2 weekends ago, though that was a pancake breakfast. And tickets will be sold at CHS and at the door for $5. And that is all from me.
All right, thank you very much, Alan.
When is the auction?
Sometime in March.
All right. Okay. Do we have good news?
We always have good news. I would turn your attention to the screen where you see some wonderful looking, what do we call this, black tote coolers? We have, as part of our wellness committee, as you folks know, every district needs to have a district-wide wellness committee. And one of our goals was to look into breakfast programs here at Chelmsford Public Schools through April's initiative in terms of writing grants to the New England Dairy Council. She had received a $4,000 grant to pilot a breakfast program at the Harrington Elementary School. And that got kicked off about a few weeks back, and we'd invited the school committee. And about 90 students per day are eating breakfast at the Harrington School. The teachers have been absolutely wonderful in terms of having breakfast within their classroom and taking part of this initiative. Could not have done it without them. and of course, under Mr. LaCava's direction and working with April. We also have another $4,000 grant from the New England Dairy Council as well to purchase breakfast equipment at Chelmsford High School, and working to get that program in place. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. And thank you, April, and thanks to everybody on our Wellness Committee under the chair of Stephanie Quinn and Katie Sims.
Okay. Next up is time for the public input. This is a time for the school committee to hear public input. We welcome public comments, but it is not a time for questions or debate. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Is there anyone here who would like to address the committee at this time? Seeing none, we will move along to the first and only order of new business, which is a continued discussion of the FY16 budget. If you will recall, last time we met, we worked our way through all of the schools and community ed. That still leaves us with sections 14 through 18 and 20, plus a discussion of fees, grants, and other revolving funds. And I see we have a couple of folks with us tonight. So, Dr. Fiona, you want to take this on?
Absolutely. You're correct. This is a continuation of our last meeting, walking you through our budget book. We also led off with section 16 last go-around with the system-wide look, where we have two of our administrators with us, Scott Moreau from Athletics and April Lasky from Food Service. We thought we would start with them. And Frank, before we invite them up, I know that you had some answers to some questions that the committee had asked last week. And if you take a few minutes just to share those with the committee, I think they'd appreciate that.
Okay, fine. Barbara, you asked a question about Adams Imaging.
Yes.
And I did some research on that. They're a company that provides service. They service our printers throughout the system.
Okay.
As well as supplies. And we will be going out to solicit quotes for next year for that type of service.
Thank you.
So hopefully in the spring we'll get that done. And Al, you had asked about the copier contracts and the term of those contracts. They're for 60 months. There are two parts to the contracts. One is the lease of the equipment, and the other is for the management services. And both of those are for 60 months. Thank you. You're welcome. Nick, you had asked to review the budget enhancement list and to delete 3 lines and provide a revised budget, which I have done here for you. That's what you were looking for, a total. And I have copies for everyone here. 2, 4, 6 we need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll just pass those out. And we have one for Adam as well. Of course we do. We're all set. There you go. That's one for Adam.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was 2 there. I thought there was...
There are 2. It's double-sided, and then there is a page 3. So basically, what happened here is if you look at line 30, you will see that the amount of money that we had under enhancements has been reduced by $232,000, which reduces our total. So, 270. Yes, that's for your information. We have done that. Also, Evelyn, you had asked for a detailed list of the longevity. So here we go. Here we go. Is a detailed list of longevity for everyone that we have budgeted for next year. And Mike, you had asked for a summary of transportation expenses. So, we have that as well to pass out to everyone. Evelyn, I believe it was you who asked for some more information on fees, how much was being charged, At each school, we have that information for you, as well as everyone else here. So, for everyone.
Pretty.
And Nick, you asked me to check on lines 403 and 405 of page 4 of the McCarthy School, because there were two salaries that appeared higher than the others.
Right.
Under the paraprofessionals. Those are correct.
Okay.
They are secretarial positions. They work more hours, they have more days, and their rate of pay is a little bit higher.
Okay, but they're not paraprofessionals.
They are not paraprofessionals,
Okay,
and so...
that was the only...
That's right.
Okay.
They were in there, so I'm going to reclassify them and put them in with the secretaries so that we'll have it more
Okay.
complete. And let's see, you, Evelyn asked about line 2114, which dealt with water, and those figures are accurate. And you also asked about line 1419 at the Parker School, which related to longevity payment. And you noted that this year there was an expense, but there was nothing budgeted for next year, and that is true, and that's accurate. The reason there was an expense this year is because the employee has retired but received that longevity at the beginning of the year. Yes.
On the paper that you handed out, it appears as though the seniority dates, I'm assuming that would be when maybe it was negotiated out of the contract.
Right.
So
Yep.
that's 93.
Mhm.
That, 'cause I
You
was
don't
trying to
see any
remember-
beyond that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
because I was trying to remember, I mean, I haven't been on the committee that long, but I've been involved.
Uh-huh.
So I was trying to remember what that was.
Okay. I also have some information for you for tab 20, which is the cafeteria revolving account. And that information is double-sided. So you will see that on one side, April has made the calculations based on the recommendations of the Department of Education for the price for school lunches for next year. And we fall within the guidelines, so she is not recommending an increase right now. On the reverse side of that, you will see a survey that April completed that will show you the price of lunches in area communities. Having said all of that, if you want, we can start with April, or you want to start with April?
Sure.
Since we just passed that information out? Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Well, that's going to be on tab 20. And again, just to review this information before you ask April any questions, if you turn to tab 20 and you go to lines 31 and 32, you will note that April is estimating our revenue to be $944,500 for next year, and the expenses are being estimated at $914,900, approximately a $30,000 surplus. And someone, I believe, asked, well, if you're projecting a $30,000 surplus, why are we budgeting for expenses in the general fund? And we do have about $75,000 to pay for the contracted service fee to the Billerica Public Schools for sharing April, as well as some other expenses for equipment repairs. I went to a meeting this past week at MASBO, and they had a representative from the Department of Education there. We briefly discussed this at our last meeting, and I said that there was a recommended amount that school districts should have as a reserve account. And had a conversation with April, and we checked that out, and it's supposed to be a 3-month reserve. So you should figure out how much that is, and I'll bet April has it on the tip of her tongue. So I'm going to pass this right along to you, and you can just take off from there and talk about expenses and revenue and all that good stuff.
Sure. So the Department of Ed does recommend that you have 3 months operating expenses for reserves in revolving funds. So that would be about $270,000 from where we stand now for expenses. So our budget at, that we're looking at, the other recommendation that we want to look at is from the Department of Ed as well as MASBO, as Frank talked about, is 85% of our budget should be for food and labor. And we are at about 78%, 41% is labor, and 37% is for food, and that is where we currently stand. So we're doing a bit better than the recommendation.
Can I have that number again? I'm sorry, you said 278?
270.
270?
Yes, and that would be 3 months' expenses.
And the food and labor costs?
So it's a percentage,
Yeah.
is what they look for, and the percentage of your budget. So it'd be 85% is recommended. We are actually only at 78%. I apologize, no more than 85% of your
No
budget.
more than.
I apologize.
Okay.
And what would, so why do they recommend that it's no more than?
So that you have, so that the remaining funds would be used for things such as paper products, repairs, et cetera, other pieces of the business.
What do you calculate that on? 10 months? You
10
calculate?
months, yes.
10 months. So it's 10 months on the 944?
Mm-hmm.
I got, all right, never mind. I got 283, 350, but I was trying to jump the gun.
So repairs on equipment come out of your budget, not the facilities?
There, it depends on the expense. If it's kitchen piece of equipment itself, we pay for that. If it's sort of attached to the building, it's paid for it out of the,
How can we attach everything to the building?
I try, believe me. It's structural, that tends to be the answer I try to give. It doesn't always work.
Everything on a string?
It's structural. I think I learned that from Frank Antonelli back in Borca.
Does the plug mean it's part of the built? Never mind.
If I screw that plug in, I think it's structural.
Whatever.
I'd be
works.
willing to donate some screws if you want.
Permanent to semi-permanent, right?
Yes.
Can't be moved.
We do have some, just as a short point of discussion, we do have some numbers in the capital of some renovation type work.
Okay.
What's encompassed in those numbers for the different schools, I do not know, because that's like the secret. So I think the person that probably can answer that question is Gary Persichetti. I think he knows what they were talking about. I don't know what the enhancements were. I don't think it had a lot to do with specifically as much equipment as it did with just the total facilities.
It's probably more like HVAC and things like that.
Correct. So,
Because April had put together a list of.
Usually I would know if they're
facilities.
buying me some new ovens or things, they would tell me. It's,
right, but these lists have been going on for quite a long time.
right, so I know that we did some alarm systems, I call them alarm systems, but systems for the walk-ins had been done, so I think, as part of capital improvements in the past, but I would assume the projects that you're speaking of are probably going to be similar, something to do with the HVAC systems within the school or the kitchens.
Okay. Might want to look into that.
I will.
Gary.
Do you see any crises coming up with any of the equipment that we have? Because some of it's old, you've, replaced things, you've had some things in there. Do you see potential for having failure on certain?
Every day,
We have that list.
every day. That's what I was looking for, is the list and
Yeah,
the
we have
date.
that list.
A year and a half
There's
ago,
a
when I
working
gave that, every day, we knock on wood, that our equipment, stays where it is. Again, we're borrowing ovens from Preferred Meals we don't own in some schools. We have, issues with some of our refrigeration and freezers where temperatures don't always hold as well. There are issues, we struggle every day to, maintain the program we have. Equipment that we don't have that we really could use, et cetera, so.
Do we have any other relationships in this system like preferred meals? I don't know, the salad at the high school, you all make it and hand it out? Or is that something we have a vendor for?
So I think what you're asking is, can we send the food out?
No, do we purchase the salads made?
Oh, no, we make
Okay,
those.
that's-
We make
yeah.
those, yes.
But preferred meals, they're already prepared and we purchase it. Is there any situation like that other than preferred meals in our system? Where we're purchasing a product like that, a prepared product?
A prepared meal?
Yeah.
No, we just from preferred meals. So we
Okay.
make, and even in the elementary school, we've been supplementing meals that we make ourselves, or that, we might do bagels for breakfast, we're buying pizza from other places. So we are trying to supplement preferred meals, but no, we don't buy any other packaged meals
Yeah.
from any other vendor, no.
And one other, the cafe, is that what it's called, at the high school? The grill?
The grill, yes.
Yeah. I guess it's a huge success. No chance that could spread throughout the system?
So if we go back to the list from a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
So I think we talk about this every time we come, is, it's equipment and labor. If when we get there, and let me back that up. We are implementing new programs. We have been able to implement breakfast at the Harrington. We're doing small steps at a time. Eventually, these small steps will turn into bigger steps. We were able to open the grill, and that was wonderful. Our goal is to continue to do that, and it'll be baby steps, but we're getting there.
Now, would we ever qualify for like the breakfast expansion grants or,
We don't have enough frame-reduced population to do so, no.
Walmart Foundation grants?
Typically, you have to have over 50% frame reduced, and we don't qualify.
So when we take a look at the budget that you had in FY15 and the one that's in FY16, it increases, and what do you base that on? You've got, basically, it was just on the salaries piece. Is that what we negotiated in the contract with you guys?
The contract is up this year, so there's an assumption.
Okay. Other than that, you have like no differences. There's not very many differences at all in any of the stuff. So you're trying to hold your own?
We're trying to hold our own. And again, we will be incrementally trying to make some changes, but until there's sort of some differences either in equipment or staff, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but we're sort of plateauing in terms of what else we can do, in terms of what we can offer.
Just to share with you what's on the list from last year, well, this past year in our discussions, I shouldn't say nothing, one thing is close in, but there is improvements for the quote-unquote kitchen cafeteria upgrade at the high school, at Parker School, this is what's on the schedule, South Row, and Byam. Those all have a category that says kitchen and cafeteria upgrade, and all of them are different dollar values, so they equate to something.
Okay.
And the numbers are fairly large, they're not little numbers,
Okay.
so, in excess of a couple of $100,000 each.
I-
So I don't know what that
I
entails.
have a feeling it might be the ventilation systems that they've been working on and improving upon, but I will look at that. I'll talk to Gary.
Okay. I just recommend you take a look at that with him, because your department should be dictating what's needed for kitchen improvements, obviously. But it's probably a combination of both, the kitchen and the cafeteria area as well.
Yes.
When you say that we're plateaued or plateauing, what are you looking for from us to break out of that? Where are the growth opportunities, and what will it take?
I think we'd have to develop a plan. There's couple different avenues we could go. If I were, two avenues I would look at. First one would be to increase the type of equipment that we have in middle and high school so that we can offer different menus to increase our participation. Clearly, once we increase participation, there'll be more revenue. We can ultimately then reinvest into the elementary schools. Or we could do the opposite, try to invest into the elementary schools to increase participation, which would, an influx of equipment, staff, or we could do it out, say, satellite out of the high school, for example. But then you'd need new equipment, you'd need a vehicle, refrigerated vehicle, a driver. So there are a lot of choices, which avenue we want to go down. I think that's something as a group we would have to decide. But that's where we're at. I think that, we've talked about over the last 2.5 years, we've really dramatically increased participation. To increase it further, we're going to need to offer more. And I don't know how to do that as we stand now, besides some small incremental offerings, menu changes, breakfast programs, things like that.
What kind of lead time would it take if we had a meeting in April?
I would be ready.
Could you do a presentation? And if you did a presentation, do you need to have it that early to do it for the following school year?
Yes, are you saying a presentation to choose an avenue?
Yeah.
I could do that. I could present something in the spring, pick an avenue, and be ready for something in the fall, yes.
Could you do it as late as June, or do we need to get it done before
I think
that?
that's pushing it, depending on which route we go, because we'd have to either quote or bid equipment, put in a plan, things over the summer. Everybody wants their work done over
Sure.
the summer, so I think we'd be pushing it if we waited till June.
Okay.
What are you thinking about?
I'm not thinking about anything except the mechanics of how something like this would work. I mean, we can't tell people, we'll deal with this in September.
Oh, no,
Right,
I
that's
understand.
what we're hearing. But I think this is the first time we've been told, look, it's time to do something, right? I mean, up till now, the discussion has been around, well, how do we do the best that we can with what we've got? And when you say plateauing, what I'm hearing is that we're getting about as much out of this system as we're gonna get. And if we wanna get more out of the system, we have to think about investing in the system. And so then the question is, when do we have to have that conversation? And it sounds to me like we have to have it in April or maybe May at the very latest. And it further sounds like we could have a presentation, but it'll be incumbent on us to come up with the funding
Yeah, and
for a solution like that.
I would recommend that one of the ways to do this, if capital is the key, is to take a look at, depending upon what the plan is. So if the plan is to work out of, just say the plan is to say, I'm gonna work with the high school and middle schools and then flow it down, then you might look at the capital plan for next year, the following year, and say, okay, I'm gonna move these two projects out, move this project in for whatever, the high school or whatever the enhancement is, and that's how you fund it on the equipment side, on the capital equipment side.
Now, already, we're talking about not next school year, but the following school
Correct.
year, because if we're
Correct.
bringing the capital piece into play. And of course, as
The list
we...
of equipment, the last time we saw that list, was like 170,000, 175,000?
Yeah, it was over
Yes.
3, I think.
Yeah, so,
Well, I
well, I think that
we'd
included,
wanna-
I think
we
it
would wanna
included the
target
two
things.
walk-ins.
It did include the two walk-ins, you're
Yeah,
right.
so, and those are on the plan now, because we got those. So I think it's like. I think it's-
300,000, and it included both walk-ins.
Right, so you take those guys off, you're down to $175.
Well, I mean, I think it'll be,
Right.
it's gonna be a little bit more targeted, is
It will be.
what I'm hearing. And of course, as we've talked about, that's only half of it, right?
I was just gonna say, so that 170, thank you, that 175 is equipment.
That's right. If we could get some self-running equipment, that would be wonderful.
It's highly unlikely.
But again, I think there's been a lot of interest in what we can do with food services, and we need to be open about what the potentials are, what the reality is.
Well, if we put equipment in and they can increase the number of lunches, if it's going to be self-sustaining, and we have to calculate how many lunches would you have to sell in order to put another person per building? Because in her budget are the salaries and the insurance. So we have to make sure that it can be covered.
Sure.
So we'd have to see how that would offset, what we would be doing.
But that said, especially if we're gonna use capital, there is a significant lead time here,
Right.
which suggests that we don't wanna push it off indefinitely.
Those two walk-ins were $103,000 combined, both together. 69 for the walk-in at the high school, 69.1 for the walk-in at the high school, and 33.6 for the walk-in at Parker.
Okay. Other questions?
On the price comparison, I have a few. On the price comparisons that you gave us, how do our lunches compare with what they offer? I mean, we've seen Bill Rickers in comparison, but the other ones, and are any of them, those prices reflective of being subsidized? Because Lowell's low.
Subsidized, you mean by using preferred meals, or?
No, by having grants and/or other monies coming in from the state and/or federal government, because Lowell is low.
Because of the
Free and reduced rate.
reduced,
Right, so
there's so
that,
many
That-
people. that
Well, no,
qualify.
that's why I'm asking, because you have the price comparisons here, and there's a little bit of a range on some of them from where we are. So I just wanted to know, not just what they cost, but what are they buying? What is being offered, do you know?
yes, I think I know what you're asking. So, some of these towns were actually in the same purchasing collaborative for some of the foods that we use, so we're serving the same menu items. Besides the preferred meals part, in elementary school, our menu items are relatively the same. Lowell's might be a little bit different. I would tend to say that they're probably serving a meal that has more, they probably serve more pasta-type meals, heavier meals, rice meals, than we do, just based on their participation rates and things. But with the other towns that are listed here, we actually purchase together. So our menus are the same. Am I answering the question correctly, or?
Sort of.
Okay.
It's
Because
just
you
that
talked
there's some
about-
kind of a range. I mean, it's not a big range. I mean, if I didn't do the percentages. But it would be interesting to see, because I think that when we had some presentations last year with Chelmsford and Bill Ricka, to see what the menu choices were.
They're the
They're-
same.
Yeah, pretty much they're the same.
Middle and high school are exactly
Yeah.
the same. So, in terms of prices, then what you have to think about is what we're reimbursed is a different rate for free, reduced, and full paid, which is probably what you're seeing in Lowell, because their, reimbursement rates on their meals is going to be higher than ours, because
Right.
75% of them, and I don't know, just saying the number, is a free meal, where ours is not.
Right, because if somebody takes a look at this, they're going to say, well, why are we so much more than Lowell if we're offering the same food? So that's why I'm asking, is because
Right.
we have to know what the money is buying and then if it's subsidized. So that's why I asked the question.
Sure.
Just to make it clear so that when you see, if anybody sees the range, they'll understand that it's similar but not exactly the same.
Right, where Lowell is probably not the same in terms of free and reduced rates, which is where I would look at comparisons at some of these prices, yes.
April, do you want to spend a minute reviewing the work that you did, filling out the questionnaire, the online questionnaire from the Department of Education?
So this is a price calculator that we have to do every year, basically to determine whether our prices, lunch prices, are in line with the federal and state reimbursements. So what we do here is we use the month of October typically as a district, and we plug in the number of paid lunches to calculate what our average lunch cost is, or weighted price, and $2.68 is our weighted price, as you can see by looking through this. Because our weighted average is $2.68, we actually do not need to go up in lunch prices for next year. I don't recommend that we do at this point, and the reason why is every time you go up in lunch prices, you lose participation. I don't think that that's something that we should do yet. We may need to look at it in the year for fiscal 17, but I don't think for fiscal 16 is something that we need to do right now. We're actually in range according to the guidelines.
I think for what we offer, we wouldn't be going up. But if we were to equip like at the elementary level, if we were to equip the kitchens and do all kinds of things to offer things comparable to the high school, then because of what would be offered, you might be able to have a different pricing.
Right, the other thing to look at is, I don't anticipate our groceries and/or milk prices to be a dramatic increase next year. There's nothing that indicates that that's going to happen. So those are things that I would keep in mind. I don't, we do pay a high price for the preferred meals, for it to be, handled a packaged meal. However, with the bid season and we're already working on that, I don't see that to be a significant increase. I'm hoping that it'll level off. So that's another reason that I would look at a price increase, is to make sure that we're covering our costs.
So this is a fairly new tool that you're using.
Yes.
And each school district in the Commonwealth is required to
To fill
do
this
it
out.
every single year.
Yes, and we've done it, this is the third year that I've done it for Chelmsford.
Anything else? All right. April, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Thanks, April.
Thanks, April.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, do you want to do that?
Sure. Scott Moreau, our athletic director, is here. And Frank will let you, walk Scott through.
Hi, Scott.
Hello. Tab 18.
Tab 18 for athletics. We have two reports for athletics here. One is for the general fund. And you'll see on line 5 that it says accounts for general fund athletics. And the other is for the athletic revolving account. So if you turn your attention to the athletic revolving account and look at lines 27 and 28, you will see that Scott is recommending a budget that is $399,000 in expenses and $399,000 in revenues. And he is happy to be here tonight so that he can review both of these budgets and answer any of your questions.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do you want to just walk us through first, or would you rather take questions first?
I can do either. If you want me to walk you through it briefly, I can do that. So, I'll start with the revolving fund. The line items on those, we've changed a few of those around. So, for instance, we have contracted services now on there, which we didn't have before. And basically, what that is we were spending that money, but we were spending it out of a supplies and supplies other account. And just talking to Frank through this process, he recommended that we really didn't do that because some of those costs were actual contracted services. So, for instance, our cheerleading coaching salaries, or the cheerleading that we do over at Absolute Gymnastics and our gymnastics team, we pay Absolute Gymnastics really what we would pay in salary. We pay it straight to Absolute Gymnastics, so we put that into the contracted services, took it out of the salaries, if that makes any sense. We added a little bit of money in there for field maintenance that we don't have currently. So if we needed something to be fixed over at a baseball field, softball field, any of those things, I would have to go and kind of try to find that money through that revolving account. We would pay for it out of a supplies account, when really they're really contracted services. We could call a company in to help us edge the baseball field, which we did last spring. So those are some of the things that come out of that account. Supplies and supplies other, pretty simple, that's what they are. We wanted to put an amount of expenses in there as to what we've seen in the past. So revenue sharing, this is kind of new for us with ticket gate revenue in terms of football games. When the MIAA changed the playoff scenario, we have to have 3 games every year now that we don't know if they're going to be home or away. If they happen to be home and we collect tickets, we have to give the other team half of the money. So we needed to build some revenue sharing money into those accounts.
So Scott, that particular line is an expense where we're paying another community.
Correct, yeah. So we just wanted that to fall into place, and the revenues have been, since I've been here, a little over $400,000 a year in terms of collection of user fees, collection of ticket gate, and miscellaneous deposits that we have, whether it's our program booklets, donations, miscellaneous donations, and things like that. Through the 4 years I've been here, the 3 full years, and this is my 4th, we've always collected over 400,000, so we thought it was safe to put that kind of revenue projection in there. Questions?
Scott, are we going to be on target from a turf field revenue perspective?
Yeah, so that's a whole different
Right.
account,
Okay.
yes.
But that-
So
that
we are on target, yes.
Okay, so it doesn't fall into...
It's not in here, no.
We're developing a separate revolving account just for the turf field revenue and expenses. It was commingled with another revolving account. We decided to take it out of there so that everyone will be able to look at it and say, this is what you're getting for revenue, this is what you're expending.
Excellent.
And then the big number in there, obviously, is, our coaching salaries in general.
How many coaches do you have?
Just under 100, I want to say.
Is there a report on when payments are made toward our turf field obligations? Is there any kind of monthly or quarterly report that's generated?
In terms of the payments that are made?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to make 2 payments a year.
Okay.
One's in the fall, and one's in the spring. Yes.
Okay.
And those are reflected in the revolving account. We went through this over the summer, right?
Right,
Did we have we had a presentation on it?
but they were
I
mingled at the
wasn't here
time.
this summer, but it just seems like I've been here since the summer.
exactly. You can see the debits when we make the payment, right? Seems to me what wasn't necessarily reflected in that revolving account was each individual payment, from an organization, the rentals. Those were getting aggregated.
Versus a
but-
detail.
Yeah, versus a detail. But again, that was when it was lumped in. Now it has been broken out, or you're in the middle
In
of
the
breaking it out.
process of being broken out right now, when you get your reports this month, it
Yeah.
should be broken out, and that will be part of it, so you'll be able to examine those revenues and expenses.
On a monthly or quarterly
On a
basis.
monthly or
Now, is there
quarterly
a minimum payment that we are required to make?
There is.
It's 94,000 in May 15th,
It's
May, and then
It's,
what's the other amount?
the,
November.
There's a
It's
smaller
a
one.
little-
Yeah, 94,000 is the May payment.
And the November payment is not the same?
It was made, no, it was 14 and change, I want to say.
Okay,
14.9, I think it was the November payment.
That's right.
okay.
And last year, we paid 23,000 total. It was the first year.
Oh, okay.
I know that it's a little bit higher than the number that we have reported here under tab 21. John Souza has recently, as you know, received a
Yeah.
part of the, received a budget, and he sent me an email to say that it will be higher than that, so I'll revise that amount.
The bond payment will be higher than that.
Exactly. I think
Yeah.
it's...
Did he send that?
He sent it by way of email.
Yeah.
I don't have my computer with me, but I'll make sure that that gets revised.
Would it ever be possible to get a breakdown, revenue and expenses per sport?
Yeah, yeah.
Coaches and whatever? That'd
Yeah.
be great. I know parents have asked about that.
Yeah, I actually, the way we did the budget this year is obviously different.
Yeah.
And so, I actually did that when I was trying to fill in my piece to this.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So I
I'd
could
appreciate
probably
that.
get it to you
Terrific,
fairly soon. Yeah.
terrific, that's great.
That's it on the revolving side, unless you have any questions.
On the revolving side, just that it's a big jump in the salaries. 20%, 21% increase.
Yeah, so, I don't know this for certain, but I'm pretty sure that not all of the salary money in the past was taken out of this.
Right.
And when Frank and I sat down, he was more comfortable and I was more comfortable with putting them all
Just
in one place.
putting it all in there. So like many of the other departments.
Yeah, so they were there,
It's not
they
that you're
just weren't-
hiring that many more coaches, it's a change in the accounting.
Yeah,
and-
we just
and
go
the
right
line
from
that they're
the
putting.
contract, you
Yeah,
know? We
right.
add them all up, and that's what the number is.
Any other questions on the revolving side? Okay. And the general fund?
The general fund is pretty self-explanatory if you have it in front of you, if you're looking at it. So, I guess I'll just take questions on it.
Lights.
Yeah, good question. When we started going through this process, I never had this line item on my Munis account, so I didn't even know about it, to be quite honest. And we noticed just from trends that we budgeted about $11,000 for it, and we haven't spent more than $1,200 or $1,300 in the years that I've been here, so safely, we just put in $2,000 for that budgeted line item for this coming year.
I thought, I had, someone mentioned it last week, and I thought that might, remember we put new lights at the high school? Remember we put in those?
Yeah.
And I thought that maybe that might have been part of it, you know what I mean? Part of what that might,
Yeah,
Slated
the
for.
only reason it doesn't make sense is because normally when we had a project like that, it would have been put in the revolving fund, like similar to the bleachers a few years back.
yeah.
There was still an account in there on bleachers, to be honest, so I don't, unless we projected higher, but this goes back a few years, and again, I didn't have it on in my sites, but, you know, we put the new lights up at McCarthy, and maybe we thought they were gonna cost more money. I'm not real sure, because I never budgeted for that.
That money's, those monies should, yeah, those monies should really come out of operating, you know,
Rental-
rentals.
correct.
To pay
And that's
that
what it
stuff.
does, yeah.
Right.
Scott, would you please talk about the accounts that you consolidated?
Yeah. So, basically, the big ones here are number 13 on your list, 580 equipment. Then you go down to reconditioning, which would be 15670 reconditioning. And then a little further down, there should be a supplies, number 20, which would be 730. So, traditionally, we have budgeted on that equipment line item anywhere from, 16,000, and you'll notice it went down on the actuals. And then FY15, we budgeted 14,591. So after speaking with Frank again during this process, it didn't make a lot of sense for us to budget money into that equipment account when, as Frank kind of brought up to me, if it's equipment, it would have to be some sort of item that was $25,000 or more, and you'd have to go out to bid and all those things. So we don't buy things like that out of our equipment line, so we condense them and put them into the supplies account. So it's more about, hard goods and any uniform needs and those things are in that supply account. So we eliminated that equipment account and just put it into the supplies account. Now, the reconditioning account is for our reconditioning, exactly what that is. So all of our equipment, after the seasons are over, we send them out to a company, they clean them, repair them, they send them back to us for the next season. We've never budgeted enough money in that account. So what we would normally, it's about $17,000, $17,500, to do all our reconditioning. So normally, what I would do is to pay those bills, they'd be paid out of the equipment account, they'd be paid out of the supplies account, in the reconditioning account. So we wanted to get that up to speed, put the right amount of money in the reconditioning account, because that's what it actually costs. We eliminated that equipment account, like I said, and put the rest into the supplies account. That's what we buy all those things out of. And then I added to that supplies account a certain amount of money, because we've never done anything for uniform upgrades. And as we've talked about here at this table before, is a lot of our fundraising money goes to uniform needs, and we're trying to get out of that mold, so we don't want to have to fundraise so much. A lot of big-ticket items that some of our teams need come out of their fundraising money, so I tried to add it into that account. So that's why there's that increase in that supply account. And it's to really take the burden off the fundraising and things like that. It won't do it all at once, but it'll, lessen it a little bit moving forward if we can.
Until my small little brain can remember, does the fundraising money go into a pool, or is it kept in separate accounts per sport?
So it's a good question. So it is kept in separate accounts per sport, but the money itself is in a pool. It goes into the
right,
student activity
yeah.
fund, and then a
But you
teacher-
account for it by,
Yes, a teacher in the school is in charge of that student activity fund, and he accounts for everything, line, by sport, by club and activity.
so when an invoice comes in for, I don't know, socks for some team,
Yeah.
it will be on the invoice what sport.
Yeah, and gets taken out of their particular
Okay,
account.
perfect.
But so the answer to your original question is yes.
Yes. Over
It
and
is
over,
both.
yes.
Scott, that's $60,000 for pool and ice. What's the breakdown? How much of it is for pool rental? How much of it for ice rental? I only asked the question because technically the ice rink is ours. but-
Yeah, it's almost half and half. It's a little more expensive for ice, so let's call it 35-25, pretty much.
freeze the water.
Very good, Al.
But if you put the two together,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
Offset
exactly
it.
that. It's probably a little higher than 35 for ice and a little lower than 25 for pool.
You don't have to shave the water.
And again, that increased, because if you just look at the budgeted amount and then what we actually spent, we were always over a little bit, so we wanted to get the right amount in there.
I wonder, when the town cuts a check for the ice, when we cut a check for the ice, does it go to the organization that's running the forum?
Yes.
Or is it to the town of
The
Chelmsford?
bills come from FMC, which is the management company,
Yeah.
and we pay directly to FMC.
And I wonder if there's any kind of rate savings for us, because
There is.
we're a town business. There is a rate savings.
We pay less than, Chelmsford Youth Hockey, for instance.
Okay,
And we pay less than their private rentals.
okay.
You could thank my predecessor for that.
Thank you, Jack.
He kind of hammered him for that over the years.
And pool is over, what, at the Y, where do we?
The low Y.
Low Y.
Other questions?
other expenses, what's in that?
All right, good. So other expenses, that creeped up as well. And it's really the MIAA, the state association dues and the league dues. Traditionally, we had paid those dues out of the principal's account, and we wanted to mainstream and get these
Okay.
expenses to the right place.
So basically, when we're looking at the bottom line, if you're going up 11.6%, it's because you're trying to make the FY16 budget reflective of actual reoccurring expenses.
Correct.
And because if that was in some other line item, you added it, so,
Right.
okay. So that answered a lot of my questions.
Yeah, yeah. We, there is a little bit, there's more than that I added into that other expenses, and there are things that we don't pay for currently that I'd like to pay for, and it was basically Leadership Institute for our captains. We normally gotta kinda scramble around to pay for those things, and some coaches' education that we've, in the past had the coaches pay for themselves, and I'd like to try to budget it. So that was probably another $2,000, I think, on that line.
Anything else? Okay. Scott, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was gonna go home and be a dad.
That's later on.
All right. Yeah, I think that would be the next thing. We've got curriculum. I think we just need to go through and touch base on the rest of these sections here. So, 14, take it away.
No problem. Well, one of the things that you'll notice in here, that the principals, when they were here last week, they budgeted in for most of their conferences pieces, so you'll see that under
Yeah.
curriculum. Some of the items that we haven't gone over is, in a lot of mine are all contractual. So we have mentor stipends, and that is for our teachers to be mentors for our teachers. That's contractual. And this current year, we have 19 teachers that needed mentors. So That's where we're getting the estimate for the monies.
Okay.
Same with the PSP secretary course reimbursement, that's contractual, we have to have $5,000 in that account, as well as the teacher course reimbursement, up to $60,000 for the teachers. And then what you'll notice is teacher conferences and PDs, it looks like it's, on top of the other ones, that's for the additional PD sessions. Our curriculum coordinators don't have PD lines, so if they have something in particular that they need to send teachers to, for a specific department, or we have a district initiative that we're working on beyond the building-based PD that the principals are sending them to, that would then flow through this office. And then if you look at the rest of them, most of them, you have to go to the next page, the rest are all the conferences that the principals had already budgeted for.
Yeah, I'm sorry, those are essentially all new line items, that's,
Correct. Instead of them trying to pull from one line or from a different line, they actually broke it up into their lines. If you do go down to line 46, though, on the second page, curriculum development for summer, that is budgeted in. It doesn't look like it's in the other years, but it always has been. That is for our curriculum writing for any of our new curriculum adoptions, new courses at the high school. We pay our teachers over the summer to redo pacing guides. I went back and looked, and that's what we typically spend out over the summertime for teachers to work on their new curriculum.
Where did that come from? Where was it before? Do you know? You have any idea?
I don't know, because it wasn't my line item before, but it was somewhere.
Find that for you, Nick. Get that to you.
Honestly, actually,
that's
Frank, I
one of
think
my
that's the one, I actually closed out that line. It was under the wrong function code, because we had it in another line item.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
Get it to everyone.
It was
Yeah, it'd
in
be
there,
interesting
it was
to
just
know.
under the wrong function code, because it had to go under teachers. And then underneath that is for the curriculum office for supplies, for $7,500.
A question about the mentor stipends. You said that you had 19 who required mentor. How do you determine who requires a mentor?
So the way we do that is that anyone that has not had teaching experience before.
So new hires.
New hires, and then anyone that's had a significant change in their assignment. So I was a kindergarten teacher, and now I'm a 12th grade English teacher.
Okay. So turnover would impact
Correct.
that line? Okay.
That's something that we increased in the last contract.
Yeah, it's $1,200 for the
Right.
mentor stipend per teacher.
We added that, as well as increasing professional development, so that we did that in the administrator's contract. And there was a number of things that we did.
And also what we've done is we've made becoming a mentor more rigorous as well.
They have to go, in order for a teacher to be a mentor, they have to go through the mentor training, which is, it is a pretty significant course. They can either do it in the summer, or they can take it as a multi-part series, which a lot are doing right now. Same with the administrators. In order to be an administrator mentor, you would have to have gone through that programming with me. I don't have any more lines.
yes, you're short of lines.
I'm sorry, I don't have any more lines for you in this.
All right, any other questions about curriculum?
So in the textbook thing, because I reviewed some of the notes, you had said that we'd need a policy change for you to bring it to us?
No, if you look at the policy that's in there right now, for you to approve it, to vote on it, that would be a change, but I was under the impression that that policy has already been updated. It was
I'll
updated
look.
about a year ago.
I'll take a look. It's just that we hadn't anything new. It wasn't that we had to approve it.
I think you
It was
just
a
wanted to
courtesy,
know.
so that we just know what we're doing as far as improvements.
Right, and I could give an update on something, here's what's new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that?
That's easy enough.
Easily.
Right, you'll recall Kristen did something along those lines.
It's not like we're doing a
Back in
lot
the
of it.
summer when we taught, she kind of walked us through how curriculum gets adopted. We had a discussion that included
Right.
talking about some of the textbooks. We didn't actually bring the textbooks in though. So, I mean, if you want to
We
see
used
a
to
copy.
actually look, you'd have like a copy in your office.
Right.
You drop by
Right.
and take a look at it.
Right, and then, if you remember Dr. Bayronabon, when he was here, he went
Right.
through what the different curriculums were for that, so that's something that we could just put together simply.
especially when we go into the next generation
Yeah,
science
and as the
standards. That will be the
NGSS
next
stuff
big.
rolls out into the elementary schools, it might be nice to see.
Right, we're finishing up
kind of
some of
a
the big
before and
adoptions
after.
now and some of the coursework, but then when we get into a larger adoption.
Right.
It's also nice, we have the discussion here, but it's also up on the screen, there's comparisons, there's different things so that the public knows how things are changing in education and what's going on within the curriculum itself and how different sometimes it actually is from when we all went to school.
Right, and especially when we do like a large adoption, when, if you recall, 3 years ago, when we, well, actually 4 years now, when we rolled out Journeys, we had the big parent night in the pack, something that significant too, you would want to reach out to the community and give them an idea of what's happening and what that looks like.
Anything else? Okay. All right,
Hold on.
Oh,
Before you run off, I do have, can we talk about?
I'm not going anywhere.
Can we talk about this transportation sheet that
Sure.
you handed out before we go off?
No, well, yeah, I think we still have a few
We're done
things
with
left to cover, so do you want to,
That's fine. Let's do that.
Just wanted to update you on this curriculum
Yep.
line that you were looking for. It's under tab 4, and it is line 97. So you'll see that it was budgeted for this year for
Yeah.
66,567. That's line 97.
What page?
That's on page 3. So
This main sheet?
if you're looking at the tab 4,
Yeah.
you have, first of all, the graph, then you have another section, then you have a
Oh, you
blue
go after
sheet.
the blue,
Oh,
okay.
after the blue sheet,
After
yeah.
the blue sheet.
You were doing what I was doing.
I'm gonna go, whoa.
Oh, my God.
Okay, I'm with you. Curriculum
Page
development
3,
enrichment. Okay.
line 97.
Okay,
All right.
that explains it, yep. Perfect.
okay, so just walking through the sections, that's 15 student services we did last week with Mr. Brooks. 16 system-wide,
That was the first one that we did last week.
17 technology,
17 technology.
we walked through. 18 we did tonight, 19 we did last week, 20 we did tonight, 21 fees. Let's take a look at fees.
Okay, well, first of all, for fees, I did pass out something tonight, so that should go in tab 21 as also. That's this.
The red, yep.
Right here. And as I mentioned, when we first put the budget out, first budget presentation, that the amount estimated for athletics was $400,000 on this sheet that was passed out. That's really for, it's not just for your user fees, it's also your gate receipts. So the user fees, Scott's left, but we reviewed this, and he told me that it was approximately $340,000. And I know I mentioned that figure when we first reviewed this information. CHIPS, you will see, and you already have seen under tab 19, Community Education, that's the estimated amount that we're expecting to receive in revenue for CHIPS. Circuit breaker right now is just a ballpark of $2.3 million. As soon as we get the cherry sheet information, then we'll know much more about that particular line.
What was it last year?
This year, it is
That's what I meant.
2.3, so we're basically saying, okay, that's what we're going to estimate it at.
What was the percentage again?
They got up to-
72% this
72.
year.
Yeah, it was close to being properly funded, but, you know, that's the first thing to go.
We'll see how that goes. The civic activities, the estimated revenue, $222,000. I would like to talk to the school committee at some point in the next month or so about your rental fees I think it's time that they be looked at, reviewed, and revised into school committee policy, because it's been a little bit since you have revised those. You recall a couple of years anyways, huh?
What's been more than
Yeah,
that?
at
It's
least
been more
since
than
I've been
that.
in this position.
So I do have a survey, which I will share with you, of area communities and how much they're charging and what our fees are in comparison. So you'll be able to take a look at that and decide whether or not you want to make any adjustment.
Now, what are we, what activities are we talking about here? This would be CYBL in the winter, but it wouldn't be
Talking
the
about-
youth sports on the fields.
You're talking about a whole bunch of activities where people are using your schools, whether they're using your auditoriums, your gymnasiums,
Your classrooms.
your classrooms. All that money is coming in and it's being put in civic activities. Right now, it's commingled with a couple of other accounts, so we're working, again, to get that out so that it's a separate account, and you'll see that the next time we present monthly reports.
Can you give me an example of who's using the classrooms
Sure.
that wouldn't be community ed?
For example, on Fridays, we have a Chinese school that rents out as the Emerson Wing on Friday evenings. And so they have all those classrooms that they rent out where they have the school.
So if that's the high school, do we know, when they've rented it in the past, where the money is distributed to? Because when we had, at one point at McCarthy, you may have been principal at the time, there was a church that was using it, and there was maybe you weren't, but I mean, you may have been there, because you've been here long enough. They had used McCarthy, and
In the auditorium?
no, the classrooms, because it was a church. They did it on Sunday. And this is a while back. This is before you. This is before you. Almost everybody at the table, I mean, Frank has been here for a considerable number of years, but it was like $85,000 a year, and until they could build their other church. But what we had done was said that if the school generates the money goes to the school in terms of, it can be used to buy, equipment or capital, not the budget, but because it's being rented, there's a wear and tear on the building, so the money would go into
So
the
you
building.
kept it specifically for the McCarthy
Right,
School, for
and
example.
I don't know, I have to take a look at the policies, and, because there may be some, I don't know if there's something in there or not, but that's what we had done. And the intent was, if the building generates the money goes to the building, rather than just being generally used by anybody. That's a while back.
And there are some cases where, like CYBL, where their fee may not seem enough. They also pay to redo our floors in the gyms.
That's right.
Well, there's a value added.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we need in terms of, if there's like the CYBL, if there's something like that, we gotta find out if there's any value added.
Sure.
Because the soccer association built the fields. So they're maintaining the fields. So they don't necessarily rent their fields, because they built them. So there's a balance that's in there that was created way back with community education when we first developed that 1301, or whatever the policy is, that was there, that was about, you'll see it, it's in that policy, some of it, in terms of the value-added piece, but we never got that's my phone, we never got an accounting every year in terms of the value-added and the cost, and, what it was we were getting for it.
But is that what we're talking, with civic activities, that would include the soccer people using the fields, but not the turf fields?
No, I don't believe
But if
so.
we're talking about buildings, and it has to do with
Where,
any, we gotta
well,
know.
okay, now I guess I'm confused about where that money goes.
I'll have to look
Yeah.
into this a little bit deeper, but I can tell you, based on my knowledge of what's going on right now, that it is not set up in such a way that the revenue is coming in from the high school and being recorded for the high school, and then the expenses going out to the high school. That's not happening. And some of this revenue that you're collecting is paying for custodial expenses.
Right.
So there's an offset there of some labor expenses. And then whatever is left, you can use for, maintaining buildings and use of supplies, that kind of thing.
So would there be kind of, excuse me,
No, no, go
would there be like a spreadsheet where you'd see what was coming in and the building that it was coming in for, and then where the money would be, because revolving account, where the money would be being used?
No. What would happen right now is that the deposits would come in. The business manager would make the deposits. There is a spreadsheet there that will tell the names of the organizations that are giving you those deposits. And at that point, that money will all go in to revenue for this particular revolving account. It won't be separated at all.
Yeah.
And so,
And I-
then, and periodically, principals will call and say, we have this expense, can we charge this to this particular account? And if it fits, it's related to maintenance, for example, a repair of a door at the high school. You may be able to say legitimately, okay, you can make that expense under this account. But there's no mechanism right now to say, okay, 3,000 was paid out of the high school, 2,500 under the Parker, et cetera.
I don't think that's necessary. I really don't. If you think about it, exactly what Frank just stated, if a school needs whatever, based upon usage of some sort, pick a school, Parker, you know, the Parker has activities on Saturdays and Sundays for basketball and whatever, or Friday nights, and they have a problem with their back door, the door to the gym and stuff. They just come to you and it comes out of the account. Versus, what if, for example, Parker, we'll use the same excuse, Parker didn't have the money, it's supposedly their rental to pay for it. What are you going to say? No, you don't have the money in the rental?
No, it comes from someplace else.
Exactly. My point is, it's not necessary because it's all the same district. So, and it's all the same civic activity money. As long as you keep track of where the money, where the usage is coming from, you know, whichever organization and what they deposited, to say, yeah, it was used at the high school versus this school versus, you know.
Are there restrictions on what the money can be spent on once it's taken in?
There are restrictions. Did I pass out to the school committee? If not, I can get that out to you. There is on the Department of Education's
the
website.
website has a list of those.
It generally tells you
Has a list
what
of
type
those
of
restrictions.
expenses you can spend that money on. I'll make sure that you get that if you haven't received it.
Well,
It would be an expense, I would assume, that is directly related to the wear and tear caused by
Yeah.
that activity. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, the floors in the hallways at the high school need to be redone. We're going to use that money. That's a taxpayer expense.
Unless,
well,
here's an
if
example.
you could, then the taxpayer money could be freed up for
something else.
other general appropriations. I mean, where I'm going with this is that this may be something that we want to look at generating additional revenue in. Just like, you know, the argument for having the turf fields was we can bring in band contests, right? Well, all of the arguments that make this a good place to hold a band jamboree make it a good place to hold a destination imagination. And I mean, if you bring 500 people in every spring for DI, for example, we want to, I think that's a good thing, both in terms of bringing some money into the revolving account. It's also a good thing to bring in all those people who are going to go looking for food up at Drum Hill for the town as well. And I think it's one of those things we want to keep an eye on. We want to see how we're doing there, right? That we should be having similar or increasing amounts of revenue every year if we're really serious about trying to generate revenue with the schools.
There was a discussion probably about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, in regards to an expense. It was, remember the mats to the entrance to the gymnasium at McCarthy? There's those things on the ground that, they're like, it's like an insert, so when you rub your feet on it, the dirt falls through, and they had totally falling apart. And I think this is how they replaced them. They used it from this account, and this is where they got the money from, because it's really the entranceway into the gymnasium, because
Right.
the students don't use it
No,
as
that's
standard
right.
practice, because they use the front door most of the time, if not all the time. So that was one of the areas where they talked about it. So that's a legitimate reason, because that's what it's used for. So it can come out of that activity account.
But now, we're using McCarthy for a polling place.
Other side, right?
No,
Agree?
No, both
No,
sides now.
both sides.
Both sides, okay.
So now, those people who are casting their votes are going to be using those mats, but the parents whose children play basketball will be paying for the replacement of those mats. Do you see what I'm saying? It's another fee. It's a little more convoluted, but it's another expense that the.
Two occasions.
Are we
you
not,
add
wait,
it.
are we?
No, I
are we
agree
not
with you,
getting
Nick,
any
but you see what I'm
revenue?
saying.
Are we not getting any revenue from the voters?
Yeah, we're,
But it's at our
You
discretion.
understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a town transfer, but
But it's at our discretion that that's what we're going to use the money for in order to replace something. You did mention Destination Imagination, and I tried to contact you because you asked a question. And in the warrants that we signed this week were bills for Destination Imagination of a little over $1,000. Because we didn't know how much we used in
gonna be looking at
FY15. So I don't know how much is there, but that's how much was in the bills that we signed.
right, yeah, no, I got your message on that.
Yeah.
But
you did
that's
ask
not what-
last week.
But that's not what I'm talking about, right? I mean,
Well, that was a zero on the line for next year.
right. But when you bring that whole group in, then you're using the entire high school. You're essentially bringing in a touring company or something to use it's the same as bringing them in for the pack.
Right, so Frank, when you're saying about looking at the rental fees, we're looking at, in terms of, say, room rates, in terms of maybe the gym, we have to take a look at the value-added piece. Are we also taking a look at how much we charge for the McCarthy Auditorium and the Performing Arts Center? We'll be doing that also?
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes there are other uses by, like if there's a drama club and things, and then they charge at the door. I'd like to know what that money is then used for within the school, where it goes, because it's gotta go somewhere. And does it go to activity accounts, or?
It does. The student activity accounts, where they're fundraising for, you heard Scott say uniforms, that they were fundraising for uniforms, or the drama club is accepting some money. They have an individual account at the high school or at the middle schools, in all of those different accounts. So there's,
Mr. CHS is DECA. So DECA puts that on, right?
sure.
And they, I think that's part of their fundraising. So
I understand DECA, my kids were in it. But it's just that it's more comprehensive in terms of looking at your fees rather than, just rooms. So we're gonna, expand it a little bit more. Because we also rent the fields to outside people beyond, we have the turf fields now, but before, we had people that, and they came before us, they wanted to rent certain fields to play something, but because,
Yes.
Don't laugh.
No, we did.
That was legitimate.
that was a legitimate,
Yeah.
the cricket club, the Boston Cricket Club is a very large organization.
Come on down.
right, but
Yeah, that was
because,
not the reception they received at
no,
that time.
but
unfortunately.
because our students and our, the sports and all of the other stuff gets preference on it, sometimes they get bumped for when they want it. But I think that would be interesting to look at the separate things like that, to see if those fees in renting the fields are also in line with, or competitive with what is out there in other communities.
Well, but again, the fields are not going into the Civic Activities Fund.
I'm gonna have to double check on that, okay?
Okay.
I'm not 100% positive, so I don't wanna give you an answer on it.
Fine.
If I have any other questions, I'll come see you.
Okay.
Any other questions on civic activities? Okay.
So the E-rate is money that we receive every year, and we've estimated that we'll receive about $48,400. We'll use that money to offset related expenses that we have for providing internet service throughout the schools. We also...
I'm sorry, can I ask,
Sure.
is that anywhere else in this budget document?
No, it's not.
It's not?
It's
Okay.
not. So it's not added to the budget. In other school districts where I've worked, I've noticed that some of them will put it in the budget as a budget item, and then they'll have another account, which will be a minus account, which will
Okay.
just subtract it right out. So the net effect is really that you're not doing anything with it.
Right.
It's similar to the circuit breaker account in that respect, Mike, you know, how we don't have it really in the budget.
So, I'm sorry, let me go back and ask about some of these, because I know, for example, circuit breaker is listed in the student services breakout.
It's in the student services, but it is not a budget item.
It's not a budget item, but we show where it's being used.
Yes.
And it's part of the calculations that build the budget itself, right? When we look at what it costs for out-of-district placement, the final budget line reflects the usage of the circuit breaker, which is made explicit in one of the supporting documents, essentially.
The circuit breaker is a credit, so there's no actual line in the budget for the circuit breaker amount. There's not, that number
Right.
is not in the budget. It's been taken out of the budget for
It's been
purpose.
taken out of the budget.
Right.
But we show where it's been taken out of the budget.
And the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure that the entire committee understood that we have a certain number of expenses under special education, and we've outlined those in detail, so that you know how many students you have at each school. And
Right.
those, I wanted to give you a total view of how much you
Yeah.
actually spend in special education.
All right. Because again, the athletics revenue is shown in the budget.
In the revolving account.
In the revolving account.
In the
as
revolving
an
account.
offset.
Right, that's right. It is shown in the revolving account.
And that's revenue just from activity, basically, just from the usage fees.
Right,
Yes.
Paid for by the students.
right. So again, I guess where I'm going with this is just trying to understand how these numbers work into the budget as a whole. For example, when you say the budget number is 53 million,
Right.
in effect, it doesn't, that number doesn't include the 2.3 million for circuit breaker, so that the
You got it.
actual expenses
got
are
it.
not 53 million, but they'd be 55.3 based on the circuit breaker.
Yes. If you wanted to get a comprehensive view of how much the school district actually spent, if you wanted a one-pager or a two-pager that would just give you a summary of all of the expenses, it should, in my opinion, include all of the general fund expenses that you have in here, the 53 million. You could put in an estimate for grants if you wanted to, although they're not certain by any means for next
Right.
year. The same with the circuit breaker and your revolving accounts. You could have all the revolving accounts. You should also include, I think this is important, all of the costs that the town pays for.
Healthcare costs.
The
Well,
healthcare
that's right.
costs, the administrative costs, any cost that the town.
Maintenance, we
The
talked
things that go into the
about
net
this at
school
one,
spending.
yeah, we talked about this probably a couple of years ago, and we said like the total expense, if you add everything up, was like closer to like 60-something million
that's right.
dollars,
It's quite a
64,
bit.
68, something like that. If you rolled in all of the expenses, everything.
And I think that's an important number for transparency to the general public, so that they're not looking at a budget of just 53 million and saying, this is how much
Right.
is being spent on education. It's much more than that. It's much more than the 53 million.
But we've had this discussion before, this is not a surprise.
Well, I think what I'm trying to drive at here is how are we going to present this? Because I would like to see a front page or two that has that final number.
Things that's built in?
We could provide a page or two as a summary, and I would need to work with the town to get some of this information, because I don't have it, and they're busy developing their budget right now, but I think if you wanted a comprehensive look at the entire budget, we could list all of our estimated expenses by category. There's your general fund, here are your revolving accounts, here are your grants, and here are the expenses that the town will pick up for you on your behalf. That way, everybody, I'm sorry.
No, I interrupted you.
That way, everybody could look at the total picture and say, that's what we're spending on education in Chelmsford.
I was just thinking more in terms of timeline. That'd be a good presentation in town meeting.
Right.
But that may not impact what we request in terms of a general fund number. I'm just
Don't
thinking-
don't muddy the water.
Right, that's,
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's about muddying the water. It's about understanding
Yeah.
what we're spending.
I agree, but we need to be very, very careful, because if you start throwing numbers out there, then there's gonna be, you need to be absolutely clear and explain and have a clear breakdown of that document, that piece of paper, one pager. You know,
Anyone
so.
can do it, Mr. Antonelli can.
Yeah, oh, it can be done. I mean, we had it. We saw it a couple of years ago.
Right, because
the
we have
town.
to have the revolving account numbers that are there, because everybody always asks for the what's in the revolving accounts, and if we have an estimate in terms of grants. Because again, when I had asked for the breakdown in terms of fees, that the parents are spending that much more money than the average taxpayer that's out there, that they don't have to incur that, and neither do they with the additional, the circuit breaker money and any other grants coming in. Granted, if you want to take a look at it, it's tax money, because you send income taxes to the state and federal government, but the piece is that that's not coming just directly out of their pocket, and that's an important piece, for me anyway.
Right, well, I think that's true of some of it, but not of others. As Barbara pointed out, the civic activities number is basically being generated by the same families who are sending their kids to school, right? So it's...
Right, but he's going to give us a breakdown just to see, because if you have rental of rooms by people in the community, it may not be necessarily parents using it for children's purposes.
Maybe we need to, categorize the type of rental.
Yeah. And
Well,
see what
we do
comes
have
of it.
that. It's in the policies, it states clearly how, what advantages there are depending upon what the request is for usage. So if it's used by the school, it's free. If it's used by an organization in town, there's a discount. If it's used by an organization from outside of town, it's a different rate. So there's different rates for all the different activities, both for the PAC, for the auditorium, for the fields. There's different rate levels dependent upon who's renting the field. So.
The format of this report would be a good topic for the finance subcommittee to review at some point. So-
Right, then we can get the details, and we can...
I'm excited.
Okay, I thought you would be, I knew you would.
Totally overwhelmed.
All right, I have managed to
I have my
derail
idea.
us
Yes, you totally
right
did.
around E-rate. So let's...
It wasn't because there was snow on the track either.
Back on track with school choice. So you're projecting roughly $200,000 in revenue for school choice this year?
and that's where we've been the last couple of years in terms of that. Obviously, we come back to the table in March to look at, in terms of recommendations for numbers of spaces, grade levels, and so forth. And then it has to do with students actually applying and families actually applying and filling those slots.
And you note here it's undetermined.
We have not set it aside. There was some preliminary discussion by the school committee about using it for kindergarten, and there was also some discussion about not having full-day kindergarten next year. So we didn't do anything with that money. We just put it there, and we said that it's undetermined at this point.
Well,
We're going to have a conversation about it.
Hold on a second. We did determine where it was gonna go.
Okay.
The determination was we were gonna keep it in reserve.
I don't
Sorry,
think
this is 16.
I-
I'm sorry,
yeah,
we're talking about
it's-
15.
I don't think we...
15 we
We're
kept in,
supposed to
right.
offset
Right.
the
We're
expenditures
supposed to
because
keep in
we
reserve
thought we were going to have a
for
deficit.
any.
And that's
potential
certainly
deficit.
one of the legitimate uses to which we could put the FY16 money as well. But I think that has certain downstream
Yeah.
implications.
Yeah.
I think Yeah, we'll have a bigger discussion once we get through the last of these categories about where we're going with this budget. And that's gonna be, obviously, 200,000 is a big number. We're gonna have to discuss what we're gonna do with that. Student activities.
This goes back to your fees. So you know what the fees are, and this is the money that we're collecting, approximately $92,000 that will offset expenses, curriculum stipends, for example, not curriculum, but student body advisor stipends. So that's what we've done with that. Next one is transportation, and you wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, can we talk about that? I was just trying to, a couple of questions on what I saw in the document.
Sure.
It says 29 regular buses, understood. Kindergarten, understood. What's middle? 8. Is that extra buses for something?
They're late buses, yeah, you have
Yeah, the
late
late buses.
buses.
So there's 8 late buses, is that what the middle school is? That's why it's at a different rate.
But is it
Crossing guards?
180 days?
What's that?
It's 180 days of
Late-
school.
But do we run late buses every day of school? We don't run late buses every
snow
day
day.
of school.
Not for the first month.
No, we can revise that then,
Yeah.
Okay,
saving money all the time.
there you go. Crossing guard? They have crossing
Crossing
guards?
A couple.
We do.
Where?
Back
One
to
in
Parker.
McCarthy?
You do?
Yeah, one in front of McCarthy and on the side of Parker. Near the high school, from Parker to the high school, there's a crossing guard in the afternoon.
Okay.
There used to be one in front of Harrington, so we don't have that person.
It would cut back. There used to be one over
And
at
there's
the
one
Westland.
here at McCarthy?
At North Road,
North Road going to
Coming out of the,
the
coming out of the
apartment complex
condos.
across.
condos.
The front.
Yeah. And those are new as of 2 years ago, I believe. You know, they were added, just the number of students coming across and.
There's a lot of kids.
Yeah, there's
amount of
a lot of
traffic.
students, and it's a dangerous
Yep.
place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's awful
People
in the
dropping
morning.
off and.
You can stand there for a half hour and not get across the street.
Absolutely.
Homeless transportation.
That's McKinney-Vento.
It's an estimate only, you can't really tell.
Correct. But how much of that does the state fund, or do they fund?
They give reimbursement through, into the town, into the general fund,
Okay.
and it's approximately 48% of whatever you report the previous year as expenses. And that fluctuates, when you look at that homeless transportation account, can go up to 130,000, it can go down to 100,000, it depends on how many homeless students move into the district or need to be transported out of the district.
It's the transported out of the district that's the tricky bit.
That's, well,
Because we have to send them back to their home district.
Right.
If
Which
they're
is-
living here.
and we have to pay for that, which is extremely painful. So, for example, if someone comes here from Methuen, and then we have to transport them back to Methuen, but it comes out of our budget.
Well, there's a cost share.
There's a, that,
Yeah, Methuen pays
Methuen.
for half of that, and that's
for
if
half.
the parents opt to keep their child in their home,
Correct.
in their home district.
And
Yeah,
the
but there's-
state's at liberty to
but
change their
there's no doubt that
percentages.
the state does not fund that the way they've.
No, they shouldn't.
said
They
they will.
don't.
Another one
And
of
it
those
sounded like that they
unfunded
were
mandates.
going to decrease it
They did
again.
this last
No.
year.
No, again.
Going forward.
Yeah.
So then, line 11, we took the 400,000 off. You're all set with it now?
Yep, I'm all set, thank you.
Well, so that number for the homeless transportation, does that factor in some kind of guesstimate about the reimbursement, or we just writing it off?
No, this is the expense that we put into the budget, so it's similar
Don't get any
to...
money for it.
Well,
Well, we
don't
could.
say you don't get any money. It's very similar to the Chapter 70 funds.
Yeah.
They're general fund revenues that go into the town. So the town is using that to help defray the cost.
Right, but not for this specific line item.
Doesn't have to be
Okay.
for that specific line item, but it just goes
Right.
into the general fund.
Can we find out how much we got last year?
Sure. I think that
Yeah.
it was probably in the vicinity of 50,000, but I'll double check on and get back to you, Evelyn.
think it's probably something that Paul presented at town meeting,
He
or
could've-
John Souza might have presented at
One
town
of the
meeting.
things that kind of has fallen below the radar is the Medicaid reimbursements, because the town takes it even though we generate it. And it wasn't always like that. That's $250,000.
So the total transportation budget, that does not include the sped transportation, is that correct?
That's correct. This
Separate.
that I just gave you is just
This is the
for the regular
regular ed
transportation.
in-town.
That's right. So the sped transportation, I think that Brad mentioned to you at the last meeting that he's working with area
A couple other
schools
schools, yeah.
to develop an out-of-town transportation bid. And of course, his estimates are based on the actual number of students that you have in your budget now. So you can
Right.
see those are the students that are going out of district, and he'll budget it based on the number of students that he has.
Turf fields, we touched on it briefly already.
We touched on it briefly, and I said that John Souza did send me an email. I'm going to adjust that. I'll have that for you next time we meet.
Any other questions about user fees or any of these breakouts that we've seen tonight?
Are we going to discuss this sheet?
You want to walk through it a little bit?
Well, just the fundraising line that says it's not required, I would beg to differ.
By the way, the other transportation outside of, talking about special ed transportation, in town is another $675,000.
That's right.
And an additional, looks like 50,000 of out of town. That sound right?
No. The reason you see a low number there, and Brad also touched upon this, is that this year, we used a grant for $900,000, and he was going to increase it to $1 million.
Right. So in reality, that's
That's right.
another 1.6 million in transportation just for special ed, which is an equivalent of every other piece of transportation that we have in the entire school district. Amazing.
Well, when you think of it, it's very
It's
expensive.
specialized, yeah, it's specialized.
To send a student from here to, say, Beverly or any other
With
community.
suitable protection, protective equipment,
Sure.
and, right. Yeah, I kind of take Barbara's point there. It's a little bit editorializing to say it's not required, and I think it might not be.
Safe to say it is
It might
required.
not be a universally accepted point of view.
No, it's kind of hard to say that it's not required when you have something like 15 students show up on a Saturday morning all selling Lions cards.
Sorry, Barbara, could you repeat that for me?
Part.
The fundraising.
The
Yeah.
fundraising on this maroon, the colored sheet.
Yes.
The item under district fundraising varies, not required, though potential burdens for parents. I believe it is required
Okay.
for some clubs and activities, sports, whatever.
Got it.
Do you want to go through grant funding real quickly?
Sure, we can do that. We have an expert at the table with us here on grants, and you didn't hear that, but she
Yeah.
is the expert.
Good, because she's got no numbers to work with.
No, she's got some numbers. Whoops, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, the next section, next tab.
So the grants are on tab 22. And Linda summarized this in both ways for us. She summarized just so that there is a written explanation, and then a few pages in, you'll see that she's told us how much we are projected to receive this year for all of these particular grants. And that's up on the board right here, so anybody at home can take a look at that and see that these are our estimates right now. It's very hard to project how much you will receive next year, and the people who are responsible for these grants in the district are always going to meetings and trying to hear what the latest is, how much money are we going to get, for example, under the IDEA for next year. There's a lot of rumors right now,
Right.
so it's hard to really come up with a solid number for you.
Once again, this is money that's spent over and above the appropriated budget.
Correct.
Exactly.
Is there any way to assign some of these to, I mean, the Arts and Technology Fund, obviously that's spent kind of broadly.
Yeah, teachers have to apply to that.
It's not part of the budget.
Right.
Could the idea stuff, though, perhaps be assigned to student services somehow?
Well, it is.
At
So
its
student
own-
services, I manage most of these grants,
Yeah.
but then we have, our Title I director works with me to do Title I, the teacher quality one I do on my own.
And that
Yeah.
would mostly go into PD?
Correct. So it depends, you have to use the grant for what it's set up for.
Right.
So when you get to the Title IIA, that has to go for professional development.
Right.
And we need that above and beyond what we already have set up for our teachers. And we attend all of the webinars through DESE to find out, how can we use it, how can we change it? If we have to go to some of the area conferences that they have, we work directly with who the grant manager is on the DESE side to make sure we can get the most out of the grant
Right.
for our district. Because each district obviously has different needs based on their student population. So we go and we specifically say, this is what Chelmsford has, this is what we need, how can we work the grant that best services the students and gives us the most amount of money from that grant.
Yeah, Mike, and we talked about this for many, many years, that we don't want to add the grant money into the standing budget because it's
No,
not guaranteed.
no,
every
we
year.
don't.
It's crazy, it's
That-
suicidal,
That's true.
you know? You just can't do that because you're going to risk $1.47 million in your budget, and next year you may not get it.
Right.
Then what do you do?
It's also based on your academic scoring, too. So take, for example, on the second page, the 274 grant, the Special Education Improvement
Yeah.
Grant.
Yeah.
Now, normally, this would be under student services, but knowing that we wanted to move forward with some of the district initiatives such as MTSS, we sat down and we reworked that grant so that we can get the support that we need, because we need technical assistance
right.
from the state.
Yeah, no, Nick, I agree with you. You can't build on it.
That's
It's sand, not stone. But at the same time, when you talk about what are we actually spending,
Again, it's you're talking apples and oranges. You need to
Yeah.
talk about what the budget is. What is the requirement from the town as a support mechanism to complement everything else that you're doing? This, your activity fees, all the other stuff. If you try to throw it all in, I'm concerned that it'll get all muddy. Frank, you're an expert at this. You've been around. You wouldn't put grant money into your budget because it's not guaranteed every year. You don't know what you get. Next year, you don't know if the, pick one. Pick anyone.
Yeah, Title I.
Well,
For example, Title I went up this year.
I guess
By
that's-
$6,000, next year it
but
goes down.
but that's
by
my
half.
concern. What if it goes away? If it's a question of PD, okay, maybe we offer a day less. But if we're talking about taking 1.1 million out of the special education department,
that's a problem.
how are we gonna make that up?
But hold on a second. That's such an extreme that the legislature would never take that on. They just won't, because it won't be us that'll be screaming, believe me. We will, but there'll be a lot of other people that'll be screaming with us. So it's one of those things
Idea
that-
needs to is due for review. Somebody's gonna take a run at it
Here's
sooner
your
or
other
later.
option, here's your other option. You take everything off the sheet, play it into your budget, increase your budget, and then the first thing people are gonna say, what are you doing with the grant money?
No, I understand. We have to find some kind of middle road, though, because because we can't afford for this money to go away either.
So can I just butt in for just a minute? Because, for example, the 632, 625 academic support grant, the 632 grant is what's used during the school year. The 625 is what we use for support in the summer. We've already received notification from the state that we have lost that monies for this summer, the 625.
The 625. from the most
Correct.
recent cuts.
Now, it's $6,000 because we use the bulk of the academic support grant during the academic school year with the students in school. However, that's still $6,000 for this summer.
That we don't have for FY16.
That's not going to be here for FY16.
That we've been spending.
Correct.
Yes, and it's gotta come from somewhere else. The problem is
Or
that.
you don't
Well, we
Or we don't
can,
provide
or we don't provide
You don't
it.
do it.
don't
That's
provide that
something,
service.
right,
And
that's
that-
something maybe you can cut.
And that can easily
but-
happen.
But
Just have
not
it
all of
there.
this is
We
stuff
didn't
that you
get
can
it.
cut.
So you get
I
creative.
understand, but, you know, I'm just,
It's tough. Other comments or questions on the grants?
I had just a couple question for clarity. So what happens is the DESE has a website that has a list of all the different grants, and we see whether or not we can actually meet them. Are there any other sites that have lists of grants? I mean, are we
That
like
we would be
using?
that as a public school district, we'd be
Yeah.
eligible for?
Because years ago, we considered having a grant writer where their salary would be reflective of a percentage of what they brought in. So the question is are there other resources that's out there that we're not tapping into? In terms, I mean, there's always stuff.
Right, like this year, we applied for, essentially the pothole grant, which is typically funded at $3 million. And we had contacted Jay Sullivan at the DESE, and this year it's only funded at $500,000. So we'd put in for that, we've not put in for that previously. So there are other grants out there, but not a lot of them, and they're starting to be decreased. Each one we've researched.
Yeah, and you have to qualify for them, so there seems like, I'll get an email from somebody, did you think of this grant? Yes, of course I did, but you have to go through and see what the RFP says on there, and if you qualify or don't qualify, and the competitive grants are difficult as well, you have to show a need, and, quite honestly, Chelmsford doesn't necessarily always present for that need. So like the safety grant, we applied for the safety
Applied for
grant.
that, too.
We didn't receive the safety grant because we just didn't qualify for the need that was out there. And however, if we did, they took that grant back because that was
Right.
one of the cuts. So you have to be,
Okay.
you have to be careful too, because if you start spending the money from the grants and then they suddenly cut the grants, now
what
you're
are
in
you
a
gonna
pickle
do
because you
now?
have to pay the price.
Well, yeah, you wait till you have the money in hand before you spend it.
Correct.
Anything else?
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
Okay. I think that concludes our review of this document. At this point, I think it would be appropriate for me to say a couple of words. Dr. Giano and Frank and I were at a meeting with the board, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, the chair of the Finance Committee, the town accountant and treasurer, and the town manager last week. We had a fairly wide-ranging discussion about where the budget was going. The most significant thing, I think, in takeaways was that the town manager provided some guidance about what he thought our base would be. He indicated he thought it would be the $50,587,000 rather than the straight $50 million. He also indicated that as far as his eye could see, there was not a lot of good news on the horizon, and he was pretty much sticking with his 1.5 million increase. So that puts us, the guidance we're getting from the town manager is that we'll have about 52 million and change. If, the sun comes out and everything brightens up and and we get really good news on things like insurance costs and a whole bunch of other things we don't expect to get good news on, we might see a little bit more than that. But you have here a document that suggests that a level service budget will cost approximately $53 million to deliver next year. And the guidance we're getting from the town is that that money isn't going to be forthcoming. So we're going to need to discuss, I think, first of all, whether fees will remain the same. We're going to need to discuss what other cuts people can tolerate. And that's where we are. I think we could profitably have a discussion about strategy. I don't know if we want to immediately reduce the number. First of all, the town manager held out some hope, however dim, of some room on the upside. He did not say you have to come back with 52 million. That said, I think it's a little difficult to know what the best approach is. This is the first time we've done something like this, trying not to back into a number. What do you want? I guess what I'm thinking about is, what do you want to go asking town meeting for? The town manager did also remind me that there is now a policy in place from the Board of Selectmen that the town manager will deliver a budget which is balanced in April, not in September. So he's in a bit of a bind himself. The number that we come back with, plus the number that Neshoba comes back with, plus the number that the town comes up with, is going to have to equal the projected revenues.
Does he know when the number's coming in from Neshoba?
Neshoba appears to be waiting on the state,
Yep.
just like the rest of us are. I think it's going to be end of March before we see anything. The date that sticks in my head is the 24th, but I could be wrong.
Well, it's March 4th that the governor comes out with his
It
budget.
was on March 4th.
So-
Right.
Okay.
So Paul is not using the 50,870,000. He's using a 50,000,005.
The
587.
587.
Right,
which-
not the unpaid bills piece.
Yeah.
Is what we were over. And then the utility piece.
Paul also mentioned that the school department's budget would be on a separate warrant article.
Yes, he did.
For the first time.
We'll be on a separate warrant article, Neshoba will be on a separate warrant article, and the rest of the town will be on one. That's not necessarily a bad thing for us. We have a good position. I believe we'll be the first to move. So we can have a healthy discussion.
So, historically speaking, if we used to do something similar to this, and I'm going way back, okay, to when I first got on the committee. Let's go back 15 years at least. We used to put together a budget like this, and it's not Paul that was the town manager at the time. Then, after all the work was done, okay, then the town manager would say, I'm sorry, but you're over, and then you'd have to cut. And so basically, what you were doing was not necessarily, at that point in time, you weren't cutting real people and real things. It was the things that you had increased, so that you didn't have those people in place. So in the $448,000 that you have of adding the 3 positions back in, and then adding the ELL people that we need, and the technology and all of that stuff, many of those positions don't exist, so then you would be cutting some of those positions.
Well-
So we had done something similar to that, and then we reduce everything by a percentage. And sometimes we haven't voted on the budget until the night of town meeting. So it's not,
Sometimes, many times.
well, nah, it hasn't been that many.
Not the last 2 years, but.
Not the last several years, but, because we're basically kept within whatever it was that Paul had given to us. So, but it's not new not to do that. So if we're thinking we have to, we got a deadline, we have to make the deadline, our deadline is town meeting.
Okay, well, let's take a step back 5 years, okay? And backing into the number, basically backing into the number since we've started, what has happened is this committee and the administration has had to go find it some way, somehow. reorganizing, changing stuff around, new contracts, going through all the different issues that we went to try to fit in and accommodate the number that was given to us to back into. I think over the last 2 years, or even the last year, but I think it's 2 years, we've been saying that we're getting very close to the end of those opportunities to become, I'll use the word, more efficient. Could we be more efficient in some areas? There's always a possibility. But to the tune of $750,000, that's huge in this country. Could you save 5K here, 10K there? Yep, but you're not gonna get to 750,000.
Not easily.
Well, not by just affecting services significantly, okay? Now, one of the reasons why I asked Frank to publish the other document, which changed the enhancements, I'll use the word enhancement, the necessities, I guess.
Well, many of them are necessities, unfortunately.
You may be correct, but I'm just telling you, people are not gonna see it that way. That takes the number from 53 and change to 52,786, okay? That was roughly a reduction of 232. Still leaves the 3 positions in place, that still leaves the 3 positions in place that we, as a team, discussed. Does not bring in kindergarten, right? That's not in there, okay? So, if we're gonna say that the town manager says the best we can do is 52, and a little bit more,
He didn't say that's the best. I think what I heard him say was, plan for that,
okay, but.
and you won't be
Okay,
disappointed.
so,
And I'm sorry, just in all fairness, he didn't commit to a number.
No, he didn't
I
commit
mean,
to a number.
There are so many unknowns out there. But what I heard you say, Mike, was not 52 flat, but 1.5.
He had indicated at the tri-board meeting that about 1.5.
Which would put us at 52,587-ish.
when this committee was getting
No,
chewed on,
87, sorry.
Yeah.
when this committee was getting chewed on at the tri-board meeting, and well-deserved, okay, for our situation and our problem, we were told to go off and put together the budget without increasing services, okay? Put the budget together of what it's gonna cost to run the school district. I think we have done that. I think the number is 52,786, I think. Not everybody here might agree with me, but I think that's what the number is, and I feel that's the number we go with. Now, if the town comes back and says, no way, that's not gonna happen, then everyone needs to understand that there's gonna be some kind of major impact to the educational system in this school district. I don't see any other way. I'm not trying to be hurtful, I'm not trying to be spiteful, I'm not trying to put the scare into people, but unless you guys know some kind of special secret,
I
don't know.
would agree with you. I think there will be questions about, have we considered raising fees? So I think we need to look at it. We don't have to do it, but we need to ask ourselves, is it even realistic? So I think we need to have a discussion around that. I think,
As long as we couch it as a tax on parents.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
That's what people are asking for. They want to know, and this is something that we're going to have to be explicit about. We're going to have to be explicit about what are we doing with the $200,000 in school choice, because people are going to ask, why don't you use that?
That's a legitimate reason.
Question. I think it's also a legitimate answer to say, did you see what happened to our budget this year? And maybe we should keep that in reserve. And maybe, if we choose not to, then I think we need to be explicit about, we are running flat out, and if there are any negative surprises, we're gonna have to come back and look for help from the town. And we just have to have these conversations. But I think even if we do all of that, look, if you increase transportation by 10%, we're only bringing the transportation fees.
35K.
Yeah, we're only bringing in $40,000.
You're gonna bring in, that's it.
I mean,
$355,000, 10% is 35K.
And once you increase it, it doesn't go away.
Yeah,
right.
it'll never go away.
Never.
Ever.
That's right.
But let's be honest, you could double it and
It
not
still won't cover the
fix the problem.
Exactly.
And we
we need
there's
to-
no
we need
way.
to be
I
able-
certainly, I'm not going to vote to double the
No,
transportation
but we
fees.
need to be able to say that we have approached NRT, we have renegotiated to our best efforts, we have put that bid out to contract. If it's detrimental to us in a time that we are backed into a corner, we can renegotiate. Courts do not oppose that. They almost encourage it, that you can renegotiate a contract at any point if it's detrimental to you.
We
So
can
I
look-
think we have to be
we can-
prepared.
Sure. If you want to set that as a goal, I mean, we
Well,
can,
if
we
you-
can look at that. I don't know that we can have that done before town meeting, and I don't know how we could force NRT to negotiate to pick somebody like that. I mean, it's worth looking at, how does their,
That's just
how
one
does their
example.
contract compare to others?
Right.
Well, we have between now and April 15th, probably, realistically, right?
Yeah, have a list of all the contracts, the length of the contracts, and then when are they up? That's important also. Because I don't know when NRT is up or any of the other ones.
I don't either.
Now, the other thing is, we can leave some of it, I think, amorphous. We may have to say to town meeting, this is what we think we need to deliver a level service budget. And if we can't get it, then we'll have to take steps that we haven't necessarily specified yet. I mean, after all, we've got between end of April and beginning of July to make adjustments like that. Rather than trying to rush in and say, you know what, we're gonna cut 10 teachers here and 5 administrators here. Maybe we wanna see what we get from town meeting and make decisions based on that, so that we know what the number in hand is, rather than try to guess at what it might be.
On the administration piece, what we would be doing is looking at different scenarios. We do this frequently, from year to year, in terms of looking at, if we had to reduce our budget by 200, 400. Because in order for us to do that between April and June, if you're talking about students have already picked their classes at the high school, if you're talking about a lot of programming that's already set, come September, doesn't mean we couldn't change it. But we would do that thinking. We've started to do that in terms of, you're always thinking around those lines. So in terms of looking from you folks, in terms of priorities, perhaps something we talk about at our next meeting as well, but I know for us, looking at different scenarios, we're continuously doing that. So if we were to have, at your request, a specific list, or our priorities, or what we think is doable, because you need to know the impact of decisions that you make.
Explain the word priorities, please.
Well, priorities in terms of, for example, class size. If your priorities for class size is no more than 25, grades 3 to, then we know as administrators, we're not going above this. We're not going to reduce a third grade teacher at every school, for example. Or if your priorities are, in terms of offerings at the high school, I mean, you could reduce offerings, you could do class sizes at the middle school, you could look at programming and so forth. That gets difficult when you have competing, because we're a district that provides wonderful opportunities in many areas. And we've talked about that in terms of being able to sustain that and still be able to be that district. We would like to. So now you look at smaller parts of the whole in a variety of different areas and spreading that out. That may be priority of the school committee, may be to focus just on middle school or high school or elementary or whatever area that is that's a priority for you folks. Does that explain it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other thoughts?
We've said it all before.
huge percentages of the budget are salaries and fixed costs. There already have been moves in supplies and textbooks and those kinds of things. And so there are no, in my opinion, as soon as we start cutting, there are no easy cuts left, right from point one. It's not like we're gonna get to them. We would start with those. And I think that's what we, as school committee people, that's what we have to make perfectly clear. We just have to keep pounding on the small percentage that is actually there where we can make cuts. Some of it's been done. And some of the things that we've added, we have no control over. And other things that we'd like to, those are the things that are gonna go. I mean, it's just, in the future, as you know from sitting in the tri-board meetings, isn't any better, so I think it's really important that the directions that we go in are really seriously thought, because they're gonna impact what we're doing for the next several years. As soon as you start changing the structure of things, you set a pattern.
Yeah.
And it's not a good one. So we have a huge task, and it's a PR task that all of us have to participate in. It's the only way we have a chance.
Yeah, Mike, and I think you're correct. I think what you need to do, is we as a team need to go into town meeting united in what we want to do, and work off of what town meeting approves. I mean, if we, here's a good example, okay? We got beat up by making reductions prior to our problem, or when our problem was occurring, and we were yelled at for not going to town manager, to the finance committee, before we made cuts before. Let's not fall into that trap again. Let's put together what we think our budget is, okay? Get back to absolute level service, absolute, no, just absolute level service, and that's the number you go in with. And then if they say no, then you have to make cuts. And then people can't scream at us. I'm not trying to pass the buck. I'm saying we'll still make the decisions, but at least we're going in with what we know is correct.
So we're backing from a needs to a level service to a reduced.
Well, we don't know if it's a reduced.
Well, if they're not going to fund our level service.
We don't know, but you don't know.
I'm just saying,
Right,
we don't know they're not going to fund our needs.
correct.
Okay. So we have to have those scenarios in place.
I think at town meeting, we have to be very patient, too, because we know that there are people who are gonna start right off.
Oh, yeah.
that, we're not gonna give you anything, can't handle money, we've seen the pattern, we know that's gonna happen. But we also, just let me finish.
Yeah.
We also know that many times, when it comes to a vote, the vote doesn't represent what's taking place on the floor of the meeting at all. So I think when we decide, I like this idea that we decide what we're going with, and we go all the way through until that final vote, and then, if we don't get it, we don't get it, but we can't back off the first time that couple of people get up and say, we're not gonna give you any money, because I don't think that's reflective of the town.
And I agree, and the one thing that I'll make this point again, and I've made it multiple times at this meeting and outside of this meeting. The monies that were spent, okay, during this whole debacle that occurred in the last 8 months, 9 months, okay, was not frivolous money spent on some outlandish thing that we did. It was spent on our kids and on our program. It was overspent, but it was spent on our kids and on our program, not frivolously buying stuff that wasn't needed, or, that's not what occurred, at least from everything that I've seen. That's not what occurred. So if people think, I don't trust you, okay. You can say what you want, but, I agree with you, Al. I think we go in with what we know it is correct, and that's what we present.
Right. But Al makes a great point. Our integrity is damaged.
Yep.
So, we have to go in there knowing our facts.
Yep.
Right, and if we decide to go in that direction, and they choose to reduce it, or whatever happens, we have to give them a very clear picture, not having a member of FinCom get up and say, well, if you have to reduce your budget, what are you going to reduce it by? And then ask each one of us what we think we're going to do. That is arbitrary. We need to be able to give something very specific, that this is what we're going to reduce. And if it is that we have to increase class sizes, and class sizes have to go up to 25, 27 kids, then that's where we go. That's an if. I'm just saying, if that is one of the ways that we choose to go, we have to have that list in terms of our priorities and/or the administration's priorities, and then how much it all totals on the side, how much it will affect the number, because most of it is salaries.
I think that's going to be difficult to do. I think we're gonna, rather than say, if somebody gets up and says, we're not gonna give you this, what are you gonna cut? I think the answer needs to be, depends on what you give us, and then we're gonna go back and take a look at it. Rather than trying to give an answer on the floor.
Absolutely.
That discussion is gonna happen here. At the end of the day, town meeting votes a number. They do not vote a distribution, right? The distribution
It's only
is
the
our
bottom line.
responsibility.
Right.
And actually, we are a department in the municipal budget, and that, to have it out as a separate warrant article is interesting to me. I haven't seen that happen since 1989. I don't know what happened before then, but it hasn't happened in 80 since then.
You know, I think the feeling was that people were going to attempt to break it out anyway, and so rather than spend 15 minutes arguing about whether or not we were going to break it out, it was in the interest of efficiency just to go ahead and do it. I don't think it's a big problem for us.
I don't either.
All right. Well,
I want to caution against making any hypothetical, throwing anything out there, because until we have, as a group, discussed, potentials, I just don't think we should be
I agree.
throwing them out.
So I think what we need to do then, what I'm hearing is that over the next month, we need to come together around a best number. We need to, and we'll have to address things like, are we gonna increase fees? We're gonna have to address things like, what are you gonna do with the money in the in all of the revolving accounts? And then we're gonna have to go with that number to town meeting, and everybody has to understand that we're not gonna be negotiating on the floor. We're bringing a number forward. Town meeting will do whatever town meeting does. That's their
Okay,
right.
but can I ask a question? You just brought up something that now it bothers me a little bit. What are we gonna do with the revolving accounts?
We need to explain where the projected revenue in each revolving account and how
And
we're
as far-
planning to use it.
Right.
How
and
it
as
can
far-
be used.
And as
Well,
far as-
that part of that is how it can be used. Some are unrestricted, some are restricted.
And as far as I know, Frank, you can straighten me out on this one, is we're running them all down except for, one, right now, school choice, and two, the community ed account, which we're not allowed to run down unless it's being used specifically for that
Well,
requirement.
again, it is being taken down.
It is, but
By about $200,000, and that number is in here.
Right.
And we just need to be prepared to
Correct.
explain how that works.
Okay, all right. So it isn't that we're building up accounts all over the place
No,
again? Okay.
absolutely not.
So what
I mean,
people get
we-
that understanding,
Right.
that's what we're
No,
doing.
and that's why we have to be able to explain that.
Right, okay,
The lost book account is, there's not any pile of money hiding there.
okay.
All right. Well, I think that'll set the tone for a lot of what we talk about over the next month. I think we don't have any further items on the agenda. However, you do have in front of you a field trip. So if there are no objections, I will add an agenda item at this time for a field trip application. Hearing none. Al, do you want to do the honors?
Sure. I move that we approve the DECA field trip to the Massachusetts State Conference from March 12th to March 14th, 2015.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Outstanding.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Because several people had asked me this question. Because we have had delays, AM kindergarten, is not meeting, so how does that balance itself out with what's going on in the afternoon? That was a question.
Well, take a look at that. AM kindergarten missed 2 sessions.
And then we had the different professional days, and then you were gonna try to balance that at the end of the year by flipping them?
Right, we started to flip them this past,
The 6th. was the
Professional day.
first- Yeah, the first professional day. So it was 5 half-days up front for the AM students to go, and then starting on the 6th for the last 5 half-days for professional days, the PM children are going to the AM session.
But it's just like when we have the different delays. I mean, I know we haven't had that many.
in the past few years, we haven't had, 2 years in a row, we didn't have any delays. Hence, we came up to this, you solve one problem and you create another.
Yeah. But it was a question, so I just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
So we're just making the afternoon kids sit quietly. We're not teaching them anything at all, so that we even up those days.
Good luck with that.
All right.
Please.
Action items, I will go through an abbreviated list because Frank answered an awful lot of them earlier. The DOR review, we're still waiting on the Board of Selectmen to vote on that. That was on their agenda, but the meeting was canceled, so I think we'll be seeing that sooner rather than later. From the meeting on the 20th, sick bank review, that was done. Place the full-day kindergarten chart online, that's been done as well. A chart from the meeting on the 3rd, a chart of contracts. I think, Frank, you were going to put together within a month a list of basically all the contracts,
All
when
the
they
contracts, all the
expire.
bids, when they expire, how much they're for, all of that business, I'll get that for you.
Right, and that's marked as a long-term thing. We did have a request at the meeting on the 3rd. I'm interpreting it as a review of the incident management plan in light of what happened at Center and the after-school daycare, and we'll take that as an agenda item. There's a public session that's been scheduled
For this Thursday.
with some of the folks at Center. There was a discussion around this at the Council of Schools as well.
Be an excellent discussion.
And I think we'll do that as an agenda item and get a look at kind of the incident, the response, and try to make sure that everybody here understands what happened as well. I also have an action item to add the action items to the agenda. That has not been done yet. I believe that will happen for the next regularly scheduled meeting. That is on my list of things to do. Real quickly, upcoming meetings, we've got regular meetings on the 24th, and I believe on March 10th and the 24th. We still need to have public input on the budget. We had talked about doing it tonight. That's been pushed off so that we could continue, so we could finish our review of it. One of the other things that we discussed at the leadership meeting was the desirability of not going through this budget line by line at town meeting, which means I think, need to host a session where town meeting reps can be encouraged to come and go through the budget. And I think that's consistent with a public review of the budget, of the FY16 budget. The question is, when should that be done?
And that would also be the public hearing that
It would be the public hearing. So I'm thinking a little bit later in the cycle, maybe as late as into April, depending on when our open dates are, just because we're going to have more information.
We usually have had that meeting the Tuesday after the election. If you want, because that's the soonest, because you've got so many days in advance of town meeting.
Right.
So that has been the latest we've ever done one.
We could try to push it up into the, March 17th, I believe. We don't have a regular meeting scheduled. We could try to do it then.
That'd be good.
Should we pencil it in for that and
Yeah.
see how the budget numbers come out? If we don't have a lot of information from the state yet, maybe we can talk about pushing it out a week or two, but
Right, because the information from the state will be coming first week of March. And I'm not sure the impact, we'll be having conversations regarding, this budget and our needs. Just so we have a definite date, because we have to post that as a hearing. And we send out an invitation to all of our town meeting reps, so to make sure that they have
Yeah, in fact,
time.
it needs to be posted in the papers
What
as
date
well.
is
Right, we do
2
that.
weeks in advance.
I believe the 17th,
St. Patrick's Day.
sure.
No,
Yeah, that'll go over well.
that won't go over well.
Well, the next one then would be the 31st, right? The 24th is a regularly scheduled meeting, so March 31st.
It has to be on a Tuesday?
Well, I assume everybody's got Tuesdays open, so.
I think we've done our budget hearing as part of a regular
We
meeting.
we could push it out after the election, because there will probably be
Do
election-related
it as part
things
of our
going on.
regular meeting?
You can flip your meetings.
We can, but it would be the entire meeting, and we've done that.
Let's do that. 24th.
You think?
Yeah.
And you can have the 31st as another school committee meeting in order to vote on things if you needed to.
Yeah, we've doubled up on a lot of these.
Well, right, but what we're talking about is hosting 160 people to walk through this line by line.
Right, you could do it on the 24th of March if you didn't want to do it the last week in March.
I have no problem doing it the last week in March.
Oh.
I mean, I would think,
But, we've done it before on the day of a school committee meeting, so we have one on the 24th.
but we've had one person or 0 people come and ask questions. That's the thing. We're expecting
You won't have
a
one person at the
big
next one.
turnout. A big turnout.
Right.
I would expect it to take all night. I mean, I would expect that we'll have to have the same crew here that we had last week.
Do we have to have our school committee meetings in this room?
No, but it won't be in this room because it won't be big enough.
Right. I guess I'm missing, why can't we have it on the 24th?
We can,
But somewhere else?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well,
I'm not going to be here on the 24th.
okay, we're not doing it the 24th.
I'm told to go before.
That is correct. All right, we'll have to find another time. But we're talking about end of March, beginning of April. It doesn't have to be a Tuesday. We can try to do it on a Thursday if that works for people's schedule better.
Yeah, we just have to find out when we're supposed to go before FinCom, too. Is that scheduled?
That is not
I don't have that
scheduled
date
yet. That may be
That's in
coming,
March.
that's probably coming this week or next. They'll be putting their schedule together. Mr. Gilroy suggested that it was his intent to have a number of people review this document rather than, in the past, it's typically been assigned to 1 or 2 members. I think we'll be getting questions from a lot more people, and I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
From FinCom.
Be prepared for that.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes then. New items, new action items tonight. The civic activity fees, we're gonna take a closer look at. Also a question about the historical McKinney-Vento numbers. And other than, a breakdown of the revenue and expenses by sports. That's what I've got. Anybody got anything else? Okay. Press questions.
It's been a few meetings since I've been up here. Hi, Alana Melanson, Lowell's son. I'm also going to just voice record the answers. First question is for the superintendent. Were you aware that Chelmsford High School Principal Charlie Cleary was named one of the 3 finalists for the Marlborough High School principal position?
Yes?
Do you have any comment on the matter?
Not this time, no.
And what is your plan if he is indeed hired by Marlborough?
We would go through the process that we go through when hiring administrators. We've hired many administrators through the district, and we would go through the same process, which would include working with staff, working with parents, and putting that out there.
Okay. Would any of the members of the school committee like to comment on the news that's been brought to light regarding Mr. Cleary?
I wish him the best of luck. You know, I think his motives for seeking this job are family, and that's a great move.
Anybody else?
I think she said it all.
Okay. And this one's for you, Mike. I just wanted an update on when I might be able to receive a formal response to the open meeting law complaint that I filed with
As
you
you
last
know,
week.
a timely response is 14 business days. I am discussing it with our attorney. We will review it, and we'll get back to you in a timely manner.
Just wanted to see if you could give me any update. And then the last thing, I just wanted to request from Frank Antonelli copies of all of the additional budget documents that you provided to the committee tonight.
Sure.
That's all. Thank you.
Can we put them online, too?
Sure.
Okay. If nobody has anything else, the time being 9:28, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Our next scheduled meeting is a regular meeting Tuesday, February 24th. Good night.